right, Rob, we're going to
Okay.
start here where we left off last time and at the bottom of page 144. Thank you.
On your employee's return, talk with him. Ask him if he thinks he has the answer. If he feels free to discuss his problems with you, if he knows you understand and you will not be upset by anything he wishes to say, he will probably be off to a fast start.
This is an interesting one because in business, your middle and upper management always has these programs that they want you to participate in. They reluctantly give you the time off to go and do these new efforts, this new way of doing business, etc. And in the end, when you get back, they're like, well, where have you been? Get back to work. Okay, it's great you did that, but there's little to no support behind the efforts. And that is a true statement across the board. So it would be interesting that if you were a caring employer and to be able to send somebody off to do some rehab, maybe get involved in AA, get a sponsor, et cetera, understanding the problem that this employee is going through and start to talk to them about it. That's an exceptional manager. If you were to ask me, that's just where we are at this point. This is an exceptional manager who is actually taking the time, energy, and effort to take care of one of their employees and hopefully bringing them back into the fold, into a highly functioning, very productive individual, but also one that is sober. Now, same thing holds true for a sponsor, especially if you get one out of rehab, a sponsee out of rehab. The good news is let's say that they've been for 30 days, they're dry, meaning that they're still kind of sober, but they're a dry drunk, if you will. They haven't had the program. They probably haven't committed themselves to realizing that they're powerless, and they haven't probably tapped into that inner strength and that higher power. They've probably just been removed from alcohol for 30 days, and that's what's working for them. Not always the case, but it is sometimes. So anyway, this is where you grab them and start to work with them individually, and hopefully, the employer probably can't become everybody's sponsor. That would just probably take too much time, although for one individual, maybe they are. But in this case, at least being one of those people that are involved in assisting is certainly a very positive thing. Rob?
Okay. Page 145, right at the top, everybody. In this connection, can you remain undisturbed if a man proceeds to tell you shocking things? He may, for example, reveal that he has padded his expense account or that he has planned to take your best customers away from you. In fact, he may say almost anything if he has accepted our solution, which, as you know, demands rigorous honesty. Can you charge this off as you would a bad account? Start fresh with him? If he owes you money, you may wish to make terms.
Yeah. So here we are. We're in a negotiation per se, and you've got an honest, open, making amends type of person in this regard. And so they've taken and they've padded their expense account. They've admitted to the fact that they've probably taken money from the company. And certainly you could work out some terms in order to make that right. I mean, right now we're making an assumption that the employer wants to keep the employee on as a potential highly functioning, productive employee. So we'll go with that. Now, if there's one that's honestly saying that they're trying to take your best customers and move on, that's a whole different story. And I don't want to necessarily get into that, but that's an interesting kind of dynamic that we should, at least consider. But, if the business is, I'll just say, if the business is going to be damaged and this employee is going to take your best customers, there's a lot more going on than just the trying to sober up and have an employee that's recovered from alcohol. So we'll just leave it at that on that part. Rob?
Yeah, the big thing here for me, it demands rigorous honesty. Remember on page 58, there are men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They're such unfortunates. Remember, in that first paragraph, rarely ever see a person fail, talked about honesty 3 times. We have to get honest with ourselves. We are constitutionally incapable of being honest. So We have to get honest. And as Leo said, if he owes you money, you may wish to make terms. And as Leo said, it's the amends process right there. If he speaks of his home situation, you can undoubtedly make helpful suggestions. Can he talk frankly with you so long as he does not bear business tales or criticize his associates? With this kind of employee, such an attitude will command undying loyalty.
Yeah, we're just continuing on here. The idea is that you can kind of test the waters. If the person is talking ill about other employees in the company, then this person hasn't necessarily figured out that he is supposed to keep his side of the street clean, and the idea behind his own resentments, but that he is pointing the finger at himself as opposed to others. And you can help guide him in that regard. Home situation, there's a couple of things going on in this very short paragraph, and that one is that talking about the home situation is a whole different set of parameters, and you basically kind of have to deal with that in a different way than you would be if they were talking ill about another employee or something to that effect. But the idea is that if they're open and honest and they're starting to talk, you can help guide and mentor, if you will, and that's a good word from a standpoint of an employer to an employee, to get them to realize, especially if they're new, that the way to do this is to think about yourself and not the others in regards to what your resentments are, your fears, etc. And so here's where we are, is that if they're in that position, with this type of employee, such an attitude will command undying loyalty. So we're basically saying is that this is somebody that you want to try to continue to work with, and they hopefully will want to work with you as well. Rob?
The greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. Whenever men are gathered together in business, there will be rivalries, and arising out of these, a certain amount of office politics. Sometimes we alcoholics have an idea that people are trying to pull us down. Often this is not so at all, but sometimes their drinking will be used politically.
Yeah, so the idea here is that there's competition in business. So obviously that's something that in some cases, in fact, I would say in most cases, a healthy dose of competition isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's very good in certain circles, especially if you're talking about business development and sales and that type of thing. Competing with each other and everything kind of helps to motivate people to do better. Okay. At the same time, that competition can also be the negative kind, which is the backstabbing, the undermining of others, and taking advantage of a weakness, etc. And certainly, I'm sure that all of us have seen both kinds of competition, both the healthy and the unhealthy. So, in terms of this, is that one, office politics, while they're there, they're almost never a great thing to get involved in. For the most part, you should leave them alone, and we all kind of know that. But what they're indicating here is that alcoholics kind of have a tendency to catastrophize, or increase the awareness of certain things, and be bothered by them in such a way that is detrimental. And when we come back up to this, resentments, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear, and certainly in a business setting, all of those have their place, and they're there almost regardless if we want them there or not. And especially if you're one that's alcoholic and know that the alcohol has been affecting your job performance in whatever way, it's only exacerbated because of the fact that you also have this resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear going on. And it could be that your resentment of others that are doing better than you. You could be jealous of somebody that got a promotion. You can be envious of somebody that got a bonus or some kind of accolade. As far as that goes, frustration because you find yourself showing up late for work or missing a meeting, etc. And then fear as your job is on the line at times. All of those things are factors, and they all apply to an alcoholic. And so what you've got to really try to do as an employer is to identify with this and talk through it, get your employee who is the alcoholic, the recovering alcoholic, to be able to talk about these things in such a way that you can help to kind of guide them through and let them know that, one, maybe their job isn't on the line right now because they are sober and they are working hard to recover from alcohol, etc. That's where we are as far as this is. And as a sponsor, these are going to be things that you're going to work through and talk about in ways of what are some techniques and some, what's a good tactic and to try to dispel some of this. Rob?
Yeah, the one thing I want to say about this little paragraph is that office politics and AA politics are similar. When we have to protect our sponsees from gossip. If we hear gossip about one of our sponsees or about somebody, we got to nip it in the bud, as they said to little Opie, in Mayberry. You can't have gossip going on in the rooms or the fellowship. The reason being is we can scare people away very quickly. We don't want to lose somebody because of gossip. Okay, remember, resentment is the number one offender. It affects more alcoholics than anything else. Okay, and rumors get started, and we got to nip it in the bud. Stop it. It's up to us to do that. So remember, office politics and AA politics are similar, and we have to protect our sponsees. One instance comes to mind in which a malicious individual was always making friendly little jokes about an alcoholic's drinking exploits. In this way, was slyly carrying tales. In another case, an alcoholic was sent to a hospital for treatment. Only a few knew of it at first, but within a short time, it was billboarded throughout the entire company. Naturally, this sort of thing decreases the man's chance of recovery. The employer can many times protect the victim from this kind of talk. The employer cannot play favorites, but he can always defend a man from needless provocation and unfair criticism.
Sure. And so here we are. You've got the exploits of a person that does, what I call the stupid human pet tricks, if you want to call it that, when they're drinking and stuff. They watch this, hold my beer kind of syndrome, if you will. I know it all too well. In the Marine Corps, there were plenty of antics at night when the Marines got together and started drinking and that type of thing, and then all to have discussions about it the next day about, can you believe, did you see, etc. And certainly that can deteriorate a person's worth with regard to being a part of a group. At the same time, if somebody is sent away for treatment to a rehab center and stuff, again, this is one of those areas where, as an employer, it's really your leadership and your management style that can help squash or quash, if you will, the fact that people are all talking about a person that's gone to rehab, and treating it as such is certainly a challenge, but it's something that you should try and do. And as they said here, the employer cannot play favorites. At the same time, you want to make sure that you're not singling out this person and protecting them to the point that everybody feels like you're playing favorites, because that can have a negative impact and can backfire on an employer very quickly. So what we're basically doing is saying that it's up to the employer and other employees to try their best to not make this a big issue. If there is an individual that seems to be talking about another person on a regular basis and everything, pulling them aside and asking them to cease the discussion and everything can be very, very helpful, especially to the alcoholic. Rob?
Again, I'll just throw in here, are we protecting our employee or sponsee from gossip? Page 146, everybody. As a class, alcoholics are energetic people. They work hard and they play hard. Your man should be on his mettle to make good. Being somewhat weakened and faced with physical and mental readjustment to a life which knows no alcohol, he may overdo. You may have to curb his desire to work 16 hours a day. You may need to encourage him to play once in a while. You may wish to do a lot of other alcohol. I'm sorry. You may wish to do a lot for other alcoholics, and something of the sort may come up during business hours. A reasonable amount of latitude will be helpful. This work is necessary to maintain his sobriety.
Yep. So there's a couple of things to highlight here. Being somewhat weakened and faced with a physical and mental readjustment to life. This mental readjustment might be akin to doing the step 11. So just kind of think in terms of the reflection at night and the work that you do in the morning, very quiet time, that type of thing. And then second, you may wish to do a lot for other alcoholics. That's also, akin to step 12. So we're talking about step 11 and step 12 kind of intertwined in here. But what we're really getting to is that you've got somebody that wants to make up for, lost or bad time from the past. They're feeling very responsible for their past transgressions. They want to make good on that. They want to overdo what they're doing in order to compensate for where they've been lacking. And so the idea here is, and I kind of have to say that this is the type of employee that you kind of want to work with, because pulling back on the reins of a go-getter is much better than trying to get an old dog off the porch and get them going, So if you've got somebody that's really not trying, that's not working hard, and you're trying to nudge them along, that's a whole different set of parameters that we're working with, as opposed to the one that you're trying to hold back. It certainly is nice to have a zealous and overachiever that comes out of rehab and is working on recovery, and also working on making amends with you, with the company, and with others within the company. But it is something that you have to be aware of and you have to watch out for. And as an employer, it's always a good idea to make sure that they have this work-life balance, if you will, and working towards that. Now, as a sponsor, sitting back and watching this, you can also be a good coach or mentor and saying, look, you've got to focus a little bit on the family. You've got to focus a little bit on some free time for yourself and having some fun, because after all, we're not a glum lot. And so if you are only focused on your work, you can get to the point where you're at burnout, and burnout can also lead back to drinking. So a good idea here is really trying to watch out for the person to say, yeah, it's great that you want to do all of this work, and you're going to get there. Over time, this is going to get made up, and you're going to get back to where you want to be and then some, but you don't want to do it all at once. Rob?
Yeah. Also, in this little paragraph, Bill twice puts in step 12 work. You may wish to do a lot for other alcoholics, and something of the sort may come up during business hours. This work is necessary to maintain his sobriety, right at the bottom. Page 89, practical experience shows that nothing will so much assure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It's funny how all through the book, step 12, when things aren't going your way, go work with another alcoholic.
Absolutely.
After your man is gone along without drinking for a few months, you may be able to make use of his services with other employees who are giving you the alcoholic runaround, provided, of course, they're willing to have a third party in the picture. An alcoholic who has recovered but holds a relatively unimportant job can talk to a man with a better position. Being on a radically different basis of life, you will never take advantage of the situation.
Okay, so we've kind of moved on here. Let's say that we've got a recovering alcoholic that is now recovered, and I'll make a note here that recovered. This is just a little factoid that I don't know why or how I ended up here, but it's the 17th time it's used in the book, but it's also the last time that he's going to use it in this book. But it does talk about being recovered. So we've talked about that. You're still always going to be an alcoholic, and you're still always at risk. But in this case, the Keystone Group and myself, as well as some others that are in this group, believe that you can recover from the hopeless state of mind and body, and truly consider yourself recovered from the trials and tribulations of being an alcoholic. So what we're talking about is that now you've got an agent, a trusted agent within your group, in your company, that you can rely on to potentially approach another person that's having trouble with alcohol and is potential as an alcoholic. So it is, and they do refer to this, it's a lesser person in a company, and I'm probably not better way to say that, somebody that's at a lower echelon within a particular organization can approach somebody at a higher level and probably bring some good to it. That's kind of touchy. It's a little dicey. It just depends on the situation. But nonetheless, if you've got somebody that's had a few months under their belt and they've recovered, you can certainly use them as a trusted agent to approach others. And provided, like they said, a third party is involved, that way it relieves you of some of the burden. And I hesitate to call it a burden, but just the responsibility of working with other employees that have show signs of alcoholism. So it's a good thing to rely on them if they can work with somebody. Now, if they can work with somebody on a lower echelon than where they are, all the better. Let's say it's a mid-level manager. Nothing is better than to have a manager, especially at the mid-level, to be able to mentor other people. In this case, mentor them through alcoholism and working with this book and as well as other things. That's a great leadership thing to have. It's a great trait. So it's really something that would be something to be proud of as an employer if you had something like this. So anyway, this is a good situation. It's one to try. It may not work, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. But at the same time, if you continue to work with different people that have got drinking problems and that type of thing, it's going to help in the long run. So certainly somebody's going to respond positively. And again, when we first started reading today, we talked about just this book alone is helpful to the potential recovering alcoholic. Rob?
Yeah, Leo, I just want to touch on a couple of points. The first one is that when we go to page 18, but the ex-problem drinker who has found the solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic within a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. And that's why the ex-problem drinker that is in your company can help out. The other point is recovered. We're not cured. On page 85, we are not cured of alcoholism. What we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual connection. In other words, when we have the flu, we have the flu. But once we don't have the flu anymore, we have recovered from the flu. Can the flu come back? Yes, it can. But at that moment in time, we have recovered from the flu, similar to alcoholism. So I just wanted to throw that in. After your man is gone along without drinking for a few months, you may be able to make use of his, oh, I'm sorry, I read that part, I apologize. Your man may be trusted. Long experience with alcoholic excuses naturally arouses suspicion. When his wife next calls saying he is sick, you might jump to the conclusion, he's drunk. If he is and is still trying to recover, he will tell you about it, even if it means the loss of his job, for he knows he must be honest if he would live at all. He will appreciate knowing you are not bothering your head about him, that you are not suspicious, nor are you trying to run his life, so he will be shielded from temptation to drink. If he is conscientiously following the program of recovery, he can go anywhere your business may call him.
So, okay, so the situation is this. Somebody calls in sick that has been recovering from alcoholism, and it's a natural thing to immediately jump to and think that maybe they've been drinking and they're nursing a hangover and just not able to work, or they're still drunk and still drinking. I think it's very situation dependent, and I think that the idea here is that if you've already committed that you're going to work with this person, giving them the benefit of the doubt is basically what we're saying here, is that you were going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Certainly people get sick regardless of whether they're alcoholic or not. And it does happen. And you just make the assumption that they've really truly become sick and they can't come in. You know, if they've been doing the right things all along, then give them the benefit of the doubt. If they have been habitually calling in sick and having problems, you know, you're going to know, because obviously they're either being honest with you and talking through it. And this is, you know, potentially the last time that they've been given a reprieve from, you know, okay, you've missed work for the 11th time in the last 3 months. It's causing a problem. I can no longer have you on board. We talked about this. This was the last straw. You're done. At the same time, you know, if they're talking to you and it's maybe the first time in the last 3 months, you certainly are going to try to give them the benefit of the doubt. And that'll go a long way, especially in this case. And what they're saying is that as the employer, you know, giving your employees the benefit of the doubt, and I've said that a couple of times now, but it really does hold true here, will go a long way to building even more loyalty with regard to this particular employee. And that's where they go at the end here, is that if they're conscientiously following the program of recovery, can go anywhere your business may call them. You know, obviously it's just one of those days that they were sick. You know, we're all coming out of, well, we're still kind of in the pandemic, but you kind of get the idea. The last 2.5 years, anybody that calls in sick, I can promise you probably the first thing everybody thinks is, do they have COVID? You know, and, you know, so many other things that are going on and everything, it may or may not be. And in most cases, it probably wasn't COVID, but there we are. So, you know, it's a natural progression for us to kind of jump to a conclusion. For the alcoholic, it's natural to jump to and think that they're drinking. So anyway, what I'm saying is that 2 scenarios here. Somebody that's habitually missing work or late, maybe that's time for you to let them go. If they've been conscientiously following the program, you've been working with them, give them the benefit of the doubt and continue to work with them. Just because they called in sick, they may truly really be sick. And the last thing you want is for them to come in and give it to everybody else. So, you know, it's a balancing act there. Rob?
Yeah, I love here is shielded from temptation to drink. Okay, we can go anywhere your business may take him. Okay, which takes me back to page 101, which is they talk about the Eskimo and the Greenland ice cap. That, you know, you can send your man out to the Greenland ice cap thinking that there's no way in heck that he will find a bottle. But there comes an Eskimo with a bottle of scotch and there ruins your whole plans. It says in the book, and if you go a little further in page 101, we can go anywhere as long as we go with the right intention. We go with the idea of what can we bring to the situation, not what we can take from the situation. You know, as long as we have, assuming we're spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. A wise man who is in this room right now talked about triggers, and that from treatment centers, they're taught a lot about triggers, people, places, and things. Okay, this wise man told me that, you know what, the 12 steps, okay, take away the triggers. In other words, you know, you could, the gun is not loaded with any bullets. You can pull the trigger and nothing's going to happen. And that's what the 12 steps do. It takes away the trigger. You know, okay, you can pull it, but there's no bullets in the gun. The 12 steps have kept us spiritually fit. The alcoholic mind is gone. So in case he does stumble even once, you will have to decide whether to let him go. If you are sure he does mean business, there is no doubt you should discharge him. If, on the contrary, you are sure he is doing his utmost, you may wish to give him another chance. But you should feel under no obligation to keep him on, for your obligation has been well discharged already.
Yeah, this is a it depends situation. Bottom line is you want to know whether or not this, you should know whether or not this person is really truly trying to get sober and to recover from alcoholism. So and I'll come back to what I talked about earlier. I've got a sponsee that's struggling mightily right now, and it is trying their darndest to get sober and stay sober. And because of, I can tell there's a sincerity and their conviction to trying, I'm going to continue to work with them. And in this case, they've already, slipped up a couple of times in the last month, and but there's been a lot of good that's coming out of it. There's a lot of good comments and statements being made. So if I'm sure he's doing his utmost, which I think he is, I'm just to give him another chance. On the other hand, and it's kind of, if you are sure he doesn't mean business, there is no doubt you should discharge him. Again, no favorites here. Treat it as if you had any other employer or employee that was giving you problems and bringing the business down, affecting the morale and or performance of other employees, et cetera, et cetera. It is time to let them go and let them figure out what they're going to do next on their own, as opposed to affecting what it would be for your company and your business. Just remember, this is a program for relapsers. So just the idea here is that just because somebody slips doesn't necessarily mean that they're not serious. It doesn't mean that, you have to decide for yourself. And this is real more for the sponsor. I'm talking as to whether to continue to work with somebody or not. I'm of the opinion that, there's at least a good 3-strike rule, in my opinion, with regard to people that are truly trying, knowing that this program is for relapsers, understanding the struggles that I went through in order to try and get sober. And I was very thankful that I wasn't abandoned, if you will, every time I slipped up in the beginning when I was still not there. I was trying my best, and sure enough, twice in a row, the 30-day mark just wasn't, I couldn't get past that 30 days before I would drink again. And finally it stuck and things worked, and I found that inner strength, and I was able to identify a higher power, and I was off to the races at that point. But it did take a couple of fits and starts to get me there. So bottom line is, really have to make a decision based on the situation, and it's going to be something that you're going to want to make very sincerely and very thoughtfully as you're going on. Rob?
Yeah, remember on page 35, Jim the automobile dealer, he got drunk 6 times, and each time they worked with him. So keep that in mind. Okay, we don't just give up on people. Remember, they're beyond human aid, and we're trying to get them to a spiritual experience and bring them through. There is another thing you might wish to do. If your organization is a large one, your junior executives might be provided with this book. You might let them know you have no quarrel with the alcoholics of your organization. These juniors are often in a difficult position. Men under them are frequently their friends, so for one reason or another, they cover these men, hoping matters will take a turn for the better. They often jeopardize their own positions by trying to help serious drinkers who should have been fired long ago, or else given an opportunity to get well.
Yeah, so this is a couple of leadership styles, kind of events. One is that, treating an alcoholic just like anybody else that's sick, and being very objective about that, I think is a positive thing for an employer. I treat people with cancer, I treat people with the flu, I treat people with alcoholism all the same. And you can just interchange any of the ailments out there that you might want to do. Giving a program such as this to your junior executives, your middle-level managers, your low-level managers, et cetera, the supervisors and stuff, is a way of actually opening the door for them to say, hey, I want you to take care of your friends and or employees that are potentially alcoholic. And here's a way of doing it. Here's something I support. Here's something I want you to try and put in your toolbox as a up and coming leader within the organization. And it is true, people do cover for other people, especially in situations like this. I mean, there was countless times I know and that I don't know that were people covered in the Marine Corps for people that drank excessively the night prior and stuff. So it was a natural thing to do that. You know, we take care of our own. But it was important to kind of identify with the fact that this was a, you know, a one-time deal or an every so often thing is one thing, and it's another thing to have somebody that's regularly drinking heavily and missing work and or you know that type of thing. But you just have to be objective and compassionate and fair, I think is the word here that we should be using. If you're fair with your junior executives and with your employees, a lot of good can come from it. Rob?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that this chapter to the employers was written by Hank Parkhurst. Hank Parkhurst was a salesman. He you know, wanted nothing more than to sell you whatever he could. And I even here he's trying to sell. You know, if your organization is a large one, your junior executives might be provided with this book. Always trying to sell is Hank Parkhurst, the forgotten man in AA. You know, if Hank hadn't gone out and got a resentment and got drunk, he would have been the man, him and Bill, side by side. You know, because if it wasn't for Hank, this book wouldn't be written. You know, hats off to Hank Parkhurst. After reading this book, a junior executive can go to such a man and say approximately this: look here, Ed, do you want to stop drinking or not? You put me on the spot every time you get drunk. It isn't fair to me or the firm. I have been learning something about alcoholism. If you're an alcoholic, you are a mighty sick man. You act like one. The firm wants to help you get over it, and if you are interested, there is a way out. If you take it, your past will be forgotten, and the fact that you went away for treatment will not be mentioned. But if you cannot or will not stop drinking, I think you ought to resign.
Yeah. So this is just basically a good approach. It's one way of approaching in a positive manner a person that's an alcoholic or has a really has a drinking problem that spills over and is affecting work. So the idea here is just, you know, a couple of things. One, it would just be awesome if you have junior executives that would take the time to read this book, understand alcoholism to us to the extent that they can actually become helpful to another employee. So that's a great thing. Second part of this is just this is a very positive way to approach an alcoholic. And even then, you can actually interchange sponsor in this and say, look, I know a little bit about alcoholism and I want to help you. Do you want help or not? And it's a nice thing to have. So both as the employer and as the sponsor, this is just a great approach. Rob?
Okay. Your junior executive may not agree with the contents of this book. He need not, and often should not show it to his alcoholic prospect. But at least he will understand the problem and will no longer be misled by ordinary promises. He will be able to take a position with such a man which is eminently fair and square. He will have no further reason for covering up an alcoholic employee.
Yeah, and the message here, hey, doesn't mean the junior executive has to agree with everything in this book, because it's not them that necessarily is the alcoholic, and they don't have to really, you know, abide by the program so much. But if they are willing to take this and say, this is a way out of alcoholism, and I would like for you to give it the commitment that it deserves and try it, you know, all the better. We don't always all agree. I mean, in the Marine Corps, it was classic. You know, you may come up with an idea that you want the CO to do, and the CO has said, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Lieutenant Kilgore, but bottom line is we're going to go do this. Well, what you do is you snap your heels together and say aye, and carry out the wishes and the orders of your commanding officer and stuff. So the same thing holds true here, is that, you know, you've given the lieutenant this book and this ability to not have to cover for their Marines, and they can actually help them through this program, even if they're not necessarily agreeable to the whole program themselves. Fine, but at least having this as a tool in the toolbox, as I've said before, to use with alcoholic employees is a positive one. Rob?
It boils right down to this. No man should be fired just because he is an alcoholic. If he wants to stop, he should be afforded a real chance. If he cannot or does not want to stop, he should be discharged. The exceptions are few.
Yep, there you go. It's really just that first thing, just because somebody has cancer, it's not a reason to get rid of them. Just because they have chronic bronchitis and it affects them from time to time, it shouldn't be discharged. Migraines, a big one for people that suffer from them on a frequent basis and everything. They may be some of your best employees. So just because they're having to take some time off, making an accommodation for a particular person is a normal thing and a natural thing and something that does happen on a regular basis. So why not afford the alcoholic the same opportunity? What they do with it is up to them, but that's the idea here is that treat them like you would treat anybody else that would be sick within your organization, and you'll go far with regard to that. So that's really where we are. Just try it. If they commit to it, work with them. Even if they slip up a few times, if they don't want to do the program and they continue to bring the organization down in some manner or fashion, it is time to discharge them. No questions asked. So, Rob?
And that's the same with sponsorship. If the person doesn't want to quit, we move on to the next person that does want to quit. We always keep the door open for them, and when they do want to quit, we'll be right there for them. We think this method of approach will accomplish several things. Will permit the rehabilitation of good men. At the same time, you will feel no reluctance to rid yourself of those who cannot or will not stop. Alcoholism may be causing your organization considerable damage in its waste of time, men, and reputation. We hope our suggestions will help you plug up this sometimes serious leak. We think we are sensible when we urge that you stop this waste and give your worthwhile man a chance.
Yep. So again, we're just restating the obvious that we've been talking about here. Do your best to try to get rid of the alcoholism to the point that you've got recovered employees that are now high functioning and productive. But again, if they don't, it's time to move on. So we're just restating it over again in just a different way. You have to protect the company for obvious reasons, because not only is it your livelihood, but it's your employees' livelihood as well. And that reputation and the ability to do business is an important one for all people considered. And you can't just let one person be this anchor and drag down the ship with it. So with them. Rob?
The other day, an approach was made to the vice president of a large industrial concern. He remarked, "I'm mighty glad you fellows got over your drinking, but the policy of this company is not to interfere with the habits of our employees. If a man drinks so much that his job suffers, we fire him. I don't see how you can be of any help to us, for as you see, we don't have any alcohol problem. The same company spends millions for research every year. Their cost of production is figured to a fine decimal point. They have recreational facilities. There is company insurance. There is a real interest, both humanitarian and business, in the well-being of employees. But alcoholism, well, they just don't believe they have it."
Okay, so this is an ignorance at a high level within the organization, and it's permeated throughout the organization as part of the fabric. And that is we don't have an alcohol problem. Anybody that exhibits the problem of alcoholism, we just get rid of them, and that's that. Unfortunately, this is the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish here, and that is that the person gets really one strike and you're out. And yet we've got, like they said, there's insurance, there's recreational facilities and that type of thing. They're actually thinking about the well-being of their employees, but one of the areas that they're kind of blind is this the alcoholism. So this is a challenge in and of itself, but it's one that can be a big help if you can win over this vice president and or the senior executives within an organization to allow and think that alcoholism is just another sickness or ailment. But obviously this company, quote, cares for their employees, but they just are blind to a few things, and one of those being alcoholism. And that's not a good place to be. And we're kind of they're trying to convey that in the way that they're talking about right now. Rob?
Yeah, perhaps this is a typical attitude. We who have collectively seen a great deal of business life, at least from the alcoholic angle, had to smile at this gentleman's sincere opinion. He might be shocked if he knew how much alcoholism is costing his organization a year. That company may harbor many actual or potential alcoholics. We believe that managers of large enterprises often have little idea how prevalent this problem is. Even if you feel your organization has no alcohol problem, it might pay to take another look down the line. You may make some interesting discoveries.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be the know-all of everything. However, I think that even with one of our regular attendees, they had a doctor coming in every couple of weeks and just going around and asking people how they're doing, checking in with them and helping them along if they had something going on. Well, they also, the senior executive can do management by walking around and leading by asking questions and just kind of getting an idea of what's going on. Talking to your junior executives in a safe environment, meaning that they are free to express anything that they want without fear of retribution, is a very positive thing. I had a story. There's a CEO that was brand new to the squadron, came out, we were all drinking beers at the bar, and he basically said, "Hey, I want to know what's wrong with the squadron that we need to work on and fix," kind of thing, and just open up and talk. Well, one of the junior officers decided to unload this big problem, and it certainly was a problem and everything. But by the time he got finished, the CEO said, "Well, JB, maybe you ought to think about leaving the squadron. It sounds like you're not happy," or something like that. And boy, it just clammed everybody up, because the last thing they wanted was the CEO thinking that they should be reassigned to a different squadron and stuff like that. So you've got to be careful about how you approach this. You can't have that fear of retribution, because people aren't going to talk to you if you are that type of manager. But again, people drink excessively. Those that drink excessively, some are alcoholics, and you can be a large organization. You can bet that there are alcoholics that are working, and probably most cases they're high functioning alcoholics. They're able to make it to work. They're productive, etc. But maybe that they aren't, and they've got people covering for them, etc. But the point they're trying to really make here is large organizations do have a problem with alcohol, just like they have problems with other things as well. And to have your head buried in the sand saying you don't have an alcohol problem is a little bit well, it's not a good place to be. Rob?
Of course, this chapter refers to alcohol, sick people, deranged men. What our friend, the vice president, had in mind was the habitual or whoopee drinker. As to them, his policy undoubtedly sound, but he did not distinguish between such people and the alcoholic.
Right. And we're just talking real quick here between what is a heavy drinker or a social drinker that lets loose from time to time, as opposed to the person that drinks habitually. As soon as they're off work, they're finding a place to get a drink. They drink through the night. They, drag themselves out of bed the next day and are already thinking about their next drink, kind of thing. I think they use an interesting word here, deranged men. I get a little bit like I smile when I read that, because if I had deranged men working for me, I think that would be quite the scenario. But nonetheless, this is, sick people is certainly applicable. I just don't know if I would call it deranged so much, but that's just because I look at the definition of deranged to being quite extreme. Rob?
Yeah, Leo, it is 12:54 right now. You want to bring Bill into it?
Absolutely. That would be good. Thank you.
Hi, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, Leo and Rob. Good job. This chapter here, well, what they're trying to do with this book is they're trying to like enlighten everybody about alcoholism. And what they're saying is a lot of people, employers, they don't understand alcoholism. They think that when we get drunk because we want to get drunk, because we're goofing off and that kind of thing. They don't realize that it's an actual sickness or illness or disease. And they're trying to give some suggestion here on how to deal with people. And we can use a lot of this for ourselves. You can use this chapter as a guide for sponsoring somebody. When somebody doesn't want to stop drinking or can't stop drinking, you're going to have to move on, and that's that. But if somebody honestly wants to stop drinking, you can keep working with them. And that works for an employer or for a sponsor. You know, there's nothing in this book about sponsorship, but we can use this because it's telling a sober person how to work with somebody who's not sober yet or who's trying to stay sober. So they're giving us a lot of instruction there. And what they have here on page 146, it says, you may wish to do a lot for other alcoholics, and something of this sort may come up during business hours. And the last sentence in that says, this work is necessary to maintain his sobriety. That's information for us. We need to work with other alcoholics. We need to help someone else try to stay sober in order for us to stay sober. This is an unconventional disease with an unconventional solution. The solution to alcoholism is try to help somebody else to stay sober. This works just the complete opposite of how we would normally think, because this is a very unconventional disease, and it doesn't work the same way that other diseases work. If you have cancer, you don't get better by trying to help somebody else with cancer. That may make your attitude better, but it's not going to do anything for your cancer. As far as alcoholism is concerned, when you try to help another alcoholic stay sober or get sober, that helps your own alcoholism. This whole thing works different than how we would normally think. And this is the point they're trying to get across, because most people think that alcoholics are just doing stuff on purpose, and they don't realize that this is actually a real illness, sickness, or disease, whatever term you want to use. So they're giving instruction here, and this was written by Hank, and I'm sure that Bill must have edited it, because you can see a lot of Bill's ideas in here, whether he gave them to Hank or Hank came up with them or whatever, but there's a lot of good information in here on how to deal with someone who's trying to get sober or who recently got sober. That's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks
Thank you,
very much, Bill.
All right, a couple of things. I'll make an announcement. I should do better at this, but Bill also has a big book study that he has on Fridays, 11 o'clock East Coast time. So it's only an hour earlier just on Fridays. So if you have a chance and during the day to go to his big book study, his information is in the chat, as well as we've got Wes that has one on Wednesday. And we've also got a friend that sometimes comes to us, and it's Art and Kemble. They have one on Monday evenings, be 5 Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Probably a little bit late for our friends out in Europe, but at the same time, it's available. But Bill from New Jersey has one that's on Fridays. So if you have the time on Fridays and want to try to do that, his information is in the chat. So thank you, Bill, and we're there. All right, Rob, let's go ahead and close with Serenity Prayer, and we'll open it up for a little bit of discussion.
Sounds great. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
All right.